picked a federal appeals court judge, Sonia Sotomayor, as his first Supreme Court nominee. Both the president and the jurist have the chance to make history here. Judge Sotomayor is now poised to become the first Latina on the high court. For the president, she is the first of what could be several Supreme Court appointments that could put his stamp on the law for a generation. ABC's Clayton Sandell reports.
Only 4 months since taking office, it's a chance for President Obama to reshape the Supreme Court.
I have decided to nominate an inspiring woman who I believe will make a great justice, Judge Sonia Sotomayor of the great state of New York.
If confirmed, Judge Sotomayor would become the first Hispanic on the court.
I firmly believe in the rule of law as the foundation for all of our basic rights.
She was born in New York and raised in housing projects in the Bronx, rising out of poverty and graduating from Princeton and then Yale Law School. She worked as an assistant district attorney in Manhattan and then in private practice. She became a federal judge in 1992, appointed by the first President Bush. 6 years later, President Bill Clinton appointed her to the appeals court.
She would bring more experience on the bench and more varied experience on the bench than anyone currently serving on the United States Supreme Court had when they were appointed.
In 1995, Sotomayor's ruling ended the Major League Baseball strike. She also recently ruled against white firefighters who sued the city of New Haven, Connecticut for discrimination. That case is rallying conservatives who are gearing up to fight her nomination. They call her a liberal activist. She's also taken heat from critics who use her own words, suggesting judges legislate from the bench.
It is Court of Appeals is where policy is made. And I know this is on tape, and I should never say that because we don't make law, I know. Okay.
Republicans in Congress say there will be a fight over Sotomayor's nomination, but they probably don't have the votes to block it. President Obama wants her confirmed by the start of the court's term in October. Clayton Sandell, ABC News, Washington.
Joining us now here on News Talk, Professor Christopher Metzler, a scholar at Georgetown University, and Ken Jost of Congressional Quarterly, author of The Supreme Court from A to Z. Welcome to you both. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Good to have you on this particular day. What's your reaction to this selection of Barack Obama's?
Well, I think clearly it's historic. I think clearly it's inspirational. I mean, the fact that now she is, well, potentially she's the fifth person who is not a white man, possibly to sit on the Supreme Court of the United States. So I think certainly that is historic. The question, of course, becomes what kind of confirmation hearing will she have and what kind of a justice will she be? I think both are still open to debate.
Presumably she's got the legal chops as well as this sort of ethnic and gender distinction, and that she's not just EEO in the purest sense.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if you look at her credentials, so you're talking about Princeton and you're talking about Yale, and by the way, editor of the Yale Law Review, so certainly she has the credentials. So this is not the question of diversity over qualification, which was what we heard before the debate. But as I think with so many other Supreme Court nominees, issues of race and gender do matter.
Ken Jost, what did you make? What was your reaction when you? And she was on the short list. Her name is not a surprise, but there's always something when you hear the actual name come forward, whether it's leaked ahead of time as this was, or when the president stands there alongside his nominee. It's always a moment of history and of political theater. What went through your mind?
Well, because she had been high on the short list, she attracted more criticism in advance than any of the other people on the short list. And one of the elements of that criticism is this insinuation that she's just diversity and not qualifications. And so the president and Judge Sotomayor both stressed her experience, her record in today's announcement at the White House. The other thing that the opponents began saying in advance of the nomination was liberal judicial activist. They were thin on citing actual decisions from her that would support that critique. And the White House today, in its fact sheet, cited 4 decisions that any conservative would have been pleased to join.
What's your read on her as a legal animal, for lack of a better.
She's a nuanced judge. The decisions that the White House listed show her to be careful and not a knee-jerk liberal activist. In one of them, for instance, she sided with police on a search that was claimed to be defective because of an invalid arrest warrant. On the other hand, an issue that's before the Supreme Court right now, strip searching a kid suspected of having drugs, she ruled for the kid instead of the school system. So her record, 400 opinions altogether, will be taken apart, but on a quick glance you can see elements of conservative, liberal, moderate pragmatism.
Joining us now on the Newsline, D.C. Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton. In addition to being the district's representative on the Hill, she's a constitutional scholar in her own right. Delegate Norton, thanks very much for your time today.
Good to talk with you.
Your reaction to this choice?
Well, it's brilliant from it seems to me, at least two vantage points. You needed somebody who had an impeccable reputation in the law, and there you have a law enforcement officer all her life. She began by prosecuting the bad guys, and then she went on to doing that and judging other matters as a district court judge. She goes to the Court of Appeals based on that record. She has been in private practice, and she gives this president the opportunity to make a historic choice, and not perhaps quite the same thing as Thurgood Marshall, but if you are Hispanic, you'll think it is the same thing, and it is something for which it is a nominee for which this president will be remembered, both because of what her appointment means to the American people and what it means to the profession.
As we gear up for confirmation hearings on the Hill, of course, in the United States Senate, how optimistic are you that this will be, and of course this will take on campaign aspects and theatrical aspects, but to the extent that this can be on the merits of her work over the years and the posts that she's been nominated for, as opposed to strictly political sideshow and opportunity for grandstanding, are you optimistic or fearful in that regard?
Very optimistic, even though there are a fair number of Republican judges who voted against her by the time she got to the Second Circuit, while unanimously approving her on the district court. And they have already telegraphed that they intend to use the nomination of whoever comes forward before they ever saw or dreamed who it would be for political purposes.
Right.
Now let's see them take on this historic nomination. My Republican colleagues already turned the Hispanic community off entirely by the way they handled immigration. Let's see them jump on this Hispanic woman who has every credential from the moment she was in Catholic elementary school to today when she's on the Court of Appeals, and no one can say she doesn't bring the highest sort of qualifications to the court. I just don't think they have a leg to stand on, except ideological legs, which won't get you very far with a president. If they're entitled to a president, to a nominee of their choice, when there's a Republican president, we demand the same courtesy.
Delegate Eleanor Holmes Norton taking time out from her busy schedule on the Hill to be with us today on this historic day in Washington. Delegate Norton, always good to talk with you. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you, Bruce.